Got my man Supa MC in the house.
Yo, what's up, boy? It's the Michigan Marvel, the Wayne County Warrior, the Detroit Defender, the Highland Park Hero, Supa MC.
Try to explain to my loving husband not because I'm light skinned has nothing to do with me using sunscreen. No, it has nothing to do. And I'm not light skinned, I'm dark like him.
Kelly Maize was a well-known survivor of domestic violence who found her voice helping others suffering through abusive relationships at home. The man accused of killing her is Jimmy Lee Brown. Now, he's a rap artist known as Supa MC.
In her Westland apartment Sunday night, she had been stabbed multiple times.
Supa MC was supposed to be the next big name out of the 313. He had real talent, an underground warrior trusted to stand face to face with the biggest rapper in the world, and a protege of Proof from D12. He was winning.
You can't kick with the lyrics I spit. I blow your head off and leave you dying in your blood.
Instead, his story took a dark turn. His life veered into a downward spiral marked by brain damage, total memory loss, and a level of violence so extreme it stunned a city that thought it had already seen it all. Jimmy Lee Brown was born around 1978 in Highland Park. To outsiders, Highland Park might sound like just another Detroit neighborhood, but locals know better. It's its own city, completely surrounded by Detroit, a strange, boxed-in place people call the Hole. Once upon a time, it was the birthplace of the automotive assembly line, a symbol of American industry. But by the time Jimmy was growing up in the 80s and 90s, all that money and momentum had vanished. What was left was cracked pavement, abandoned factories, and a day-to-day mentality built entirely around survival. Jimmy didn't just grow up in Highland Park, he inherited it. His roots in the city ran deep, tangled up in stories that never made it into textbooks, but lived on through street memory. One of those stories centered on a figure from mid-20th century Detroit folklore known as Black Jesus, a legendary presence on Linwood Avenue. Jimmy's grandfather was one of his protectors. That legacy mattered. Jimmy came up believing that your block wasn't just real estate, it was family. You defended it, you represented it, you stood your ground no matter what. By the early 90s, Jimmy had found his outlet, rap. Taking the name Supa MC, he stepped into a Detroit hip-hop scene that had zero patience for weakness. This was before uploads, before social media, before clout could be manufactured. Everything was face-to-face. You had to rap in rooms full of skeptics, battle in front of people who wanted to see you fail, and earn respect bar by bar.
I just went with Supa MC because that's what I am. That's what I was, that's what I'm destined to be, that's what I am.
At just 14 years old, Supa pulled off something most grown rappers only dreamed about. He got himself into a room with Rakim, the God MC. No autograph requests. Supa did what he knew how to do. He freestyled. Rakim listened, then looked at the teenager and told him he was dope as F. For a kid from Highland Park, that wasn't just praise, it was ignition. That moment lit a fire that wouldn't burn out for decades.
I was sneaking to open mics by myself, and I would be rapping like all this crazy, superpower, superhuman.
In 1994, Supa took another major step by joining one of Detroit's most feared underground collectives, the Almighty Dreadnaughtz. This wasn't a casual crew you just signed up for. To get in, you had to survive a battle gauntlet against established members like Guilty Simpson, Hex Murda, and Konphlict. It was lyrical trial by fire. If you were soft, you got exposed immediately. Supa held his own. Not only did he earn his spot, he went on the road with them, carrying that Highland Park grit across the country and solidifying his reputation as a serious MC. Then came 2001, and a moment that would quietly cement Supa's legend. Curtis Hanson brought his cameras to Detroit to film 8 Mile, the movie that would introduce the world to the city's battle rap culture. The production needed real faces, real energy, real authenticity. Hundreds of locals were cast as extras for the shelter club scenes, and Supa MC was one of them. But the real story didn't happen on camera, it happened between takes. Filming dragged on. Long days, hot lights, endless waiting. To kill time, the extras did what Detroit rappers do. They formed ciphers. Freestyles started breaking out, and the energy shifted. The crew realized these weren't just background actors pretending to rap. These guys were dangerous. Someone from production had an idea. Hold an impromptu battle tournament, and the prize will be a chance to film a battle scene against Eminem's character, B-Rabbit. Supa MC won his slot. The plan for the scene was simple. Eminem had been told to save his voice, no actual rapping, just lip-syncing so they could dub the audio later. Supa stepped into the moment like it was everything. He went straight at M, unloading real bars with real intent. The crowd reacted immediately. Supa was winning the room.
You can't kick with the lyrics I spit. I blow your head off and leave you dying in your blood.
That competitive switch flipped in Eminem. He ignored the instructions, turned his mic on, and fired back, improvising a rebuttal on the spot. What was supposed to be a controlled movie scene turned into a real gladiator battle. Later, Eminem even commented on it, saying he'd been told the mics would be off, but suddenly they were on and people were coming at him. In the end, the scene never made the theatrical cut. From a storytelling standpoint, it made sense. Having B-Rabbit battle multiple opponents diluted the tension. Supa's moment was relegated to the DVD extras, turning him into a kind of hidden figure in hip-hop history. He received residual checks for years, but not the fame. He became a ghost attached to the biggest rap movie ever made. Still, Hollywood wasn't Supa's biggest cosign. That came from Proof. Big Proof, the heart of D12, the mayor of Detroit hip-hop, saw something in Supa MC. In 2005, Proof launched Iron Fist Records with the goal of putting Detroit talent front and center, and Supa was the only solo artist he signed. That alone spoke volumes. Together, they released the mixtape By Any Means Necessary. For Supa MC, this was the moment everything felt aligned. The streets knew him. The legends respected him. Proof had his back. After years of grinding, it finally looked like Highland Park's own was about to step through the door he'd been kicking at his whole life. But on April 11th, 2006, everything collapsed. Inside the CCC Club on 8 Mile Road, what started as a stupid argument over a pool game spiraled into gunfire. When the smoke cleared, Proof was dead. Detroit hip-hop didn't just lose an artist that night, it lost its spine. Proof was the glue, the mediator, the motivator, the big brother who kept the city's talent moving forward. When he died, the ecosystem cracked.
Rapper Proof is shot and killed in a nightclub in Detroit. His real name is Deshaun Holton. According to police, an argument led to gunshots at the CCC nightclub located in Detroit's 8 Mile Road.
For Supa MC, the loss was devastating on a personal and professional level. Proof wasn't just a friend, he was his shield and his path forward. Iron Fist Records, which had been built almost entirely on Proof's energy and vision, stalled out without him. Doors that were once cracked open slammed shut. Supa was suddenly on his own again, a seasoned soldier with no army behind him. He went back to grinding in the underground, carrying the weight of what could have been for another 14 long years. Then life hit him again, harder. On October 10th, 2020, Jimmy Brown was involved in a horrific car accident on the highway. The impact was severe. He was rushed to the hospital and slipped into a coma that lasted a full day. When he finally woke up, the damage was already done. He had suffered a severe traumatic brain injury.
The rest of Jimmy Brown's life started October 10th, 2020. After a car accident he doesn't remember.
It was like space with no stars. Like imagine space with no stars folded on top of itself like 3 times. And you looking through the folds. That's how dark it was.
The memory loss was complete, total. He looked at his own reflection and didn't recognize the man staring back. When he saw the woman sitting beside his hospital bed, his wife, he had no idea who she was. Later, in an interview, he tried to explain the moment with awkward humor.
He didn't recognize himself or his family, not even his wife.
I mean, my wife's pretty as hell, so when I seen her, I was like, she was like, you my wife? I'm like, yeah, okay. All right, yeah, for sure.
To the outside world, it sounded like a miracle story. Local news stations ate it up. Detroit rapper relearns how to walk and rhyme. Love survives memory loss. Husband falls in love with his wife all over again. Jimmy even rebranded himself as Supa MC Obsidian the Fallen One, framing the accident as a rebirth.
And now, as Supa MC Obsidian the Fallen One, I guess you could say he is new and improved.
But something darker was happening beneath the surface. the man who woke up from that coma wasn't the same man who went into it, even if he wore the same face and used the same name. And the woman holding his hand in that hospital room had no idea she was caring for the man who would eventually take her life. To understand the real weight of this story, you have to look at Kellyanne Maize. Kelly wasn't just the wife, she was a force. Born in November 1974, Kelly was a proud member of the Saginaw Chippewa Indian tribe. She carried her heritage in her identity and her work. In Detroit's poetry spaces, she was known as Native Child. To women navigating trauma, abuse, and despair, she was a lifeline. Kelly wasn't new to pain, but she had transformed hers into purpose. She worked with Haven, a nonprofit supporting survivors of domestic violence, and partnered with Hagira Health to organize suicide prevention training. She traveled across the country, from Atlanta to Denver, performing slam poetry that turned her past wounds into survival guides for others.
Even good girls have to fight for evolution and know your life may not be televised, but you will still shine like stars in my eyes. Own your words.
She had escaped an abusive relationship back in 2010 and rebuilt herself piece by piece. Over time, she became what many women called a mother poet, a protector, a nurturer, someone who created safe spaces wherever she went. Her personal mantra summed up her worldview perfectly. Surviving is hard, it's ugly, it's beautiful, and it's necessary. Kelly and Jimmy had been together for 13 years and married in 2015. From the outside looking in, their life appeared stable, almost redeemed.
I'm trying to explain to my loving husband not because I'm light-skinned has nothing to do with me using sunscreen. No, it has nothing to do. And I'm not light-skinned, I'm dark like him, I think.
Even Kelly's daughters bought into it at one point. Jimmy wasn't just a boyfriend in the background. He showed up as a stepfather. He attended birthdays. He stood proudly at graduations. He posed for prom photos. He played the role convincingly. Celeste Maize, Kelly's eldest daughter, later admitted she once looked up to Jimmy as a father figure. That's part of what makes this story so unsettling. Jimmy Brown wasn't obviously monstrous. For years, he passed as a protector, a family man, a survivor who had endured loss, setbacks, and a near-fatal accident. But behind closed doors, the relationship was decaying. Family members would later reveal that domestic abuse was a constant undercurrent in Kelly's life with Jimmy. Her daughters sensed it. They warned her. They begged her to leave him. They saw the danger even when Kelly hoped love, patience, or healing could fix it. Celeste noted something chilling in hindsight. When arguments happened in front of the children, Jimmy would walk away. He'd de-escalate. He'd perform control. He knew how to look restrained when eyes were on him. But the one time the kids weren't there to witness it, that restraint disappeared. And that's when the mask finally slipped. It all circles back to that car crash in October 2020. When Jimmy Brown woke up from the coma, unable to recognize his own wife, the local news wrapped it up like a feel-good movie plot. A man falls in love with his wife all over again. But neurologically, it was anything but. What Jimmy was likely dealing with was serious frontal lobe damage, a type of traumatic brain injury known for wrecking impulse control, emotional regulation, and judgment. This kind of injury doesn't turn someone into a villain overnight, and it doesn't excuse murder. But it does paint a frightening picture. A man whose internal brakes were gone, walking around unchecked. A ticking time bomb sitting on the couch. The same guy who once rapped about overcoming adversity was now fighting his own rewired brain, and he was losing. By early 2024, the marriage had finally fractured. Jimmy and Kelly separated. Kelly moved into an apartment on McKinney Drive in Westland, a quiet suburb just west of Detroit. She was trying to move forward with her life. She had plans. She was talking about a trip to Universal Studios for her upcoming 50th birthday, something joyful to look ahead to. But separation doesn't always mean freedom. Jimmy was still around, still connected to her life in ways that hadn't been fully severed. That lingering proximity would prove fatal. On Sunday, January 7th, 2024, something was wrong. When Celeste Maize came home that evening, she felt it immediately. The apartment didn't feel alive. The lights were on, but the silence was unnatural. Her mother wasn't downstairs where she usually was. No music and no movement. Celeste walked down the hallway toward Kelly's bedroom. What she found inside was unimaginable. Kelly Ann Maize was lying on the floor. Her body was wrapped in blankets. A towel had been placed oddly around one of her hands, as if someone had tried, too late, too uselessly, to clean up or care for the damage after the violence had already run its course.
I went inside the room. I saw the towel that was on her hand, and the blankets were wrapped up around her.
Celeste reached out and touched her mother's foot. It was cold. Kelly hadn't just been killed. She had been destroyed. The medical examiner later documented 17 stab wounds to her neck and chest. This was sustained, personal, and enraged. Forensic experts call it overkill, a term that almost always points to intimacy gone feral. Celeste called 911 immediately. Then she called Jimmy Brown. He didn't answer. He was already gone. But the manhunt didn't last long. Whether the adrenaline faded or the fractured parts of his brain finally caught up with reality, Jimmy didn't stay on the run. Later that same day, he walked into the Westland Police Department and turned himself in. He was charged with first-degree murder. Bond was denied. Just like that, the story was no longer about hip-hop or tragedy or recovery. It was about a woman dead on her bedroom floor and the man who put her there.
January 7, 2024, around 6 o'clock, this man, 46-year-old Jimmy Brown, would eventually plead guilty to stabbing his wife, Kelly Maize, to death.
The fallout rippled fast. Detroit's hip-hop community reeled. So did the domestic violence advocacy world. People didn't know where to place their grief or their anger. On one side were the hip-hop heads who remembered Supa MC, the Highland Park lyricist, the Dreadnaughtz, the guy who held his own against Eminem on the 8 Mile set. To them, he was a fallen figure, another what if swallowed by trauma and bad luck. On the other side were Kelly's family, her friends, and the women whose lives she had touched through her advocacy. They didn't see a tragic artist, they saw a coward. A man who butchered a woman who had spent her life protecting others from men exactly like him. And Kelly's story demanded to be centered. She was murdered in her own sanctuary. A woman who worked with domestic violence survivors. A poet who stood on stages telling women they could survive male violence. A protector who believed healing was possible, even for broken people. She had tried to love someone through damage that eventually consumed her. The day of reckoning came on March 10th, 2025. The Wayne County courtroom was heavy. Victim impact statements tore through the room, stripping away any remaining sympathy for the troubled artist narrative. Stacey Maize, Kelly's twin sister, took the stand. She spoke about a bond that predated memory itself. Kelly was twin B, younger by just 3 minutes. Stacey described their birthday ritual, a tradition that never failed. Every year, happy birthday twin A, followed by happy birthday twin B.
I always received an ecstatic happy birthday twin A from her, and I would reply, happy birthday twin B.
That ritual was gone now, cut off violently, forever. Through tears, Stacey told the court how the silence on their birthday was now unbearable. Then Celeste Maize stood up. She faced the man she once admired, the man she once called a father figure, and whatever softness might have existed in the room evaporated. I hate him now, she said plainly. He is no father of mine. She talked about the nightmares, about how sleep no longer brought rest, only replay. She described the moment that haunted her the most, the sensation of touching her mother's cold foot, how that feeling looped in her mind over and over, a physical memory she couldn't escape. When it was Jimmy Brown's turn to speak, he offered remorse, but it landed hollow against the weight of what he had done. I wish I could say I'm sorry a million times and each time bring Kelly back, he told the court. I have the greatest sympathy for this entire family.
I wish I could say I'm sorry a million times and each time brings Kelly back. I have the greatest sympathy for this entire family.
But apologies don't raise the dead. The judge looked at the man who once stood on the edge of mainstream success and delivered the sentence. 18 to 40 years. Jimmy Lee Brown will likely be in his mid to late 60s before he even sees a parole board. His remaining prime years will be spent inside the Michigan Department of Corrections.